So what I'd like to do is real briefly have each of our panelists introduce a little bit about themselves and how you're connected to business funding as a whole. We'll go through a little bit of data and then we'll kind of walk through a little bit more details of some of the topics we know that come up when it comes to business funding. So Misty, you got that to say.
Well, hello everyone. I appreciate you coming today. So I'm Misty Thomas with REI Oklahoma, and I am in our business lending department. So I've been with REI for a little over 10 years. Started out in our loan closing department within our business lending, and then did some loan servicing, and then left for a little while and did some hospital management, and had the opportunity to come back to our REI as a loan officer. And REI's mission is just so powerful to me. We're here to help business owners and homeowners alike to build our communities. So it starts with the roots, right? With our startup businesses and our existing businesses. And we just have so many resources available from our business resources department with trainings and one-on-one counseling and all of the things that they do. To our business lending department whenever you're ready for financing or you're looking for financing that you can't get through a traditional means, through a bank or credit union or what have you. So that's kind of why we're here. We cover the entire state. We come to you if necessary, as you guys are in your businesses. You're working every day. So we go out all the time. I'm actually heading out to very rural Oklahoma next week to sit down with some people and help them with their loan applications. We're here to help in whatever capacity you need.
Can you all see me? I can see 99%. But good morning, everyone. Such an exciting week. So my name is Srijita Ghosh, and I'm a venture advisor at I2E. I2E stands for Innovation to Enterprise. So that is what we've been doing for the last 25 years, is helping Oklahoma companies, helping Oklahoma founders go from that concept stage to helping them with the advice and the resources and the funding that they need to scale and grow their business to become an enterprise. So the field that we have our expertise in is with high-tech, high-growth businesses. So what does that mean? So these can be companies who are having an innovative solution, or perhaps they're looking at the market in an innovative way. You don't always have to recreate, the wheelhouse to do something different. You can approach things differently. And with the high growth aspect, it's essentially because most of our funding structures are equity based. So what that means is we are looking for scalable companies. So like Kristin mentioned, if you're a local coffee shop, your market is more targeted locally, perhaps regionally. And we have our great partners with Verge and REI, and that's one of the reasons we are in this OCN partnership, so that we can refer out companies that we don't have the expertise to serve. But we work with these companies who are trying to explore that strategy of having a scalable startup. So in my role as a venture advisor, which last week somebody misread that as a venture advisor. And I was like, I wish, but it is.
I mean, you did just go skydiving recently.
But I was like, it sort of is an adventure, because I am, hands in with the entrepreneurs, working with them, and it is quite an adventure. And so my why into doing this work is also, I was a founder when I was a student, and kind of dabbled into trying to figure out a problem and have a solution for it. But unfortunately, as an immigrant and as an international student, I did not have all the resources that I needed to move forward. And then I had an amazing opportunity to work in a rural community in Oklahoma, in Ada, Oklahoma. So between those two things, it really opened my eyes to how entrepreneurship is still not accessible to everyone, and that we need to change that. So I'm extremely grateful for things like OKC Medweek, and that's sort of my why, is to help make entrepreneurship accessible for all. And excited to talk about money today.
And then I'm Kristin Garcia. I'm the Executive Director of the Verge OKC. A little bit about kind of my background and why I think this is a topic that we need to discuss, is I not only, having worked at colleges and universities, have seen students struggle in getting to completing a degree, but I know that's the same thing that happens for people getting their business started. It's not easy for everyone, and the road isn't just like a singular way of getting there. And so I had worked with my dad on a leadership consulting company in San Antonio for a number of years, and then we also had, the recession happened in 2008, and that was like the one thing people were like, we're not gonna work on our people, we need to work on all these other things. So at that time, I kind of went through the process of working for an online university, and my brother, who's an Army veteran, started a startup, and then eventually sucked me into this world. And there was just a lot we didn't know in the process of having this tech startup. We had good situations, we had bad situations. We were fortunate that at least the investor we initially had when the business had to close and reopen sold the business back to my brother for $1 because he just believed in what he was doing. He was just like, you've learned everything and now you have to like reconfigure it. So I think that kind of even goes into the aspect of finding people that you can trust and not just taking money if it's out there. And then for the Verge, really a big part of it is just finding out what people have questions about, finding resources. We have Veronica here with Bank of Oklahoma. I think she's a great representative of our banking community. You're at events, you want to get to know people, because we know this is scary, and in a world where we're all trying to figure out our own personal credit and our personal generational wealth that we're creating, partners like REI who can also help with purchasing your first home, banks that want to help you figure out how to work on your personal credit, and a number of initiatives like that are just really important too, before you make these big steps of just putting money towards those certain initiatives. So last year for Med Week, we hosted a sales and revenue workshop, so I'll talk a little bit about that today too, because at the end of the day, if there's something that you can start selling tomorrow that will help you with getting to where you want to go, I'm going to talk a little bit about that from my perspective. So just a little bit of information to kind of know about. I thought this was some interesting statistics. So the Kauffman Foundation has a capital access lab. It says 83% of entrepreneurs do not access institutional forms of capital. So that's bank loans or venture capital. So, and it says 0.5% is what will be used for venture capital for entrepreneurs. So if the first thing is kind of letting people know that if your goal is someone's gonna invest in my dream and it's just gonna happen, this is what the percentage looks like. So it's very few and far between. So we want to make sure that we're providing you all with enough information to understand what your options could look like. And know that in a lot of cases, a lot of the businesses that have gotten started, it's not a matter of like in 6 months they were successful. We're looking at 2 years to 10 years. Like I said, my brother started his company, and it wasn't until about 2 years ago, which he had already been doing it for 10 years, that he was like, oh, I should just sell what I have. Why have I been trying to make it so perfect? And now they're making all of these sales with what he and he's like, we could have sold what we're working on like 5 years ago. And I was like, yep, but you were in your own way. Yeah. So now that I do this, he listens to me a lot more. So when we think of types of money that could be used for your business, we can look at the idea, like I said, self-funding. Not all of us come from a place where we have all this money just sitting there. So what does that look like? I'll talk a little bit about that. We'll have Srijita kind of talking about the aspect of investors, maybe describing some of the words that are associated with venture capital and understanding that world. And then Misty providing a little bit more information on loans and really what makes REI Oklahoma different than just going to a bank. I think it's really important how we work with banks in that process. So that's just kind of a general overview of what we're going to cover. And so I have a list of a couple of different questions that we'll go through, and then we'll open it up for anyone. But I hope, if anything, like with all the other workshops and events that you've attended, this just opens up to creating relationships with all of us here and everyone in attendance. Don't do this by yourself. Let's all help each other in getting this process started. So I guess, Misty, would you like to share a little bit about what are some of the common ways of funding a small business or a local business and some things that you all work with individuals on?
Sure. So there are a number of ways to get funding for your business. Of course, we'll talk about the venture capitalist portion of it. There's also, crowdsource funding. There's obviously self-funding. You're saving up, you use your savings, your 401k, what have you, to fund your business. There's also traditional banks and lending institutions. Where REI kind of fits in with that is that we're kind of geared more toward the businesses that aren't quite ready for bank financing yet, or maybe have been turned down, or maybe their business doesn't fit into that mold yet. So we kind of fill that gap, if you will. So we can be a little more flexible on our terms. If you're looking at, especially a startup business, it's hard. It's hard when you go in to a bank and say, okay, I have this great idea. It's gonna be so wildly successful. Give me money. I'm gonna pay it back. You're gonna love it. Everybody's gonna love it. I'm gonna have all the people. Well, great. Okay, so let us see your business plan and your financial projections. We need to see all of these things, and you do those things, and they say, well, what do you have for collateral? How much equity do you have to put into this project? And, we get people that's like deer in headlights. What do you mean I need collateral? But, I'm gonna be building this. So we can be more flexible, I should say. Not that we're doing unsecured loans, not that we're giving loans to people that can't manage their personal finances. We just have a little more leeway in being able to provide those funds. Not everyone that comes to us is ready, even for our programs, where our resource partners come in. We can help you get your business plan created, help you do those financial projections, help you even sometimes find space to operate your business. And we just have so many different things, and our services are free. And I just don't think that people know how many free resources are out there for small businesses, and to take advantage of every single one that you possibly can. So that may not have answered the question, but we're there. We also work with our banking partners. We have programs through the Small Business Administration, where one of those programs we do have to have a bank involved. The bank is the SBA, and it's the business owner. We collaborate on those things. We also have just straight up partnerships with REI, with our direct loan funding, with a bank, where they have a project that's good, but it's not quite good enough for them to take the risk on 100% at the bank. So they come to us and say, hey, this is what we have. Do you want to partner? And we just look at it, we have it, minus large contribution, obviously, and share in the success of that business, and maybe even the failure. If we have to liquidate, we share in that as well. So, that's kind of what we are.
Can I ask a follow-up
Yeah.
question? So collateral.
Yes.
So how would you define what that is? What are forms of collateral? And then are there ways to help people even establish collateral so they can get a loan?
That's a very good question. That's a very common question. So collateral generally would be your assets, right? Your fixed assets. So your business real estate, your business personal property, your personal real estate, your personal property that you own. Collateral can also be just in the form of cash as your equity injection. When you walk into a lender, they want to know that you have a stake in the deal too. That you're not going in and saying, okay, I have this idea, I need your money, but I don't have any money to put into it. I don't have any assets to pledge to say that, I'm gonna repay this debt, and if I don't, then I'm gonna hurt a little bit too. That sounds awful, but that's exactly what it is. So you may not have a home, you may not have a car that doesn't have a lien on it, you may not have a business property that you're needing to pledge, but let's say you're wanting to purchase a building, or you're wanting to purchase some equipment. That's gonna be collateral for the loan. So we kind of look at what you have, what you're needing the funds for, we're taking that as collateral. If you are asking for maybe some funds that are not tangible, like working capital, maybe even inventory that's gonna be, you know, recyclable, reusable, you know, you're gonna be using that. If you're asking for a lot of those, money for those things, then we may have to look at adding some additional collateral to secure that. So it's kind of a, you know, it's kind of a broad answer to that. Yes.
I was gonna ask, is existing inventory or equipment or tools, are those able to be used as collateral as well?
Absolutely,
Okay.
yes. If you have some equipment that you already own, inventory, yes, that's, you know, kind of a different subject in itself. But absolutely, you can, if you already own those, they don't have any liens against them, then absolutely pledge that, you already own it. Yes?
What about accounts receivable or purchase invoices?
Yes, now, REI does not offer revolving loans of credit. So that's kind of one thing. If you do need a line of credit, a lot of times with existing businesses, obviously, that's what the bank will kind of use as their starting point of how much you can borrow, how much you can draw down, and tie that to, you know, as far as collateral for that as well.
Wait, two questions. For utilizing, like, you can use fictitious numbers, like how much equity investment are you gonna use? Let's just say it's $100,000 investment. Are we talking about 25%, 75%, 50%? What is that looking like?
So it's gonna vary across the board as far as what lender you're talking to. A lot of times going into a bank, for a startup, especially, they're probably looking for, you know, a 20% equity injection. We typically, with our direct loan funds, we look for a minimum of 10%. And that doesn't always come in the form of cash. Sometimes it is, you know, other assets that they want to pledge in lieu of cash if you just don't have that, or if you want to keep your personal funds, maybe you have saved up and you have some personal savings that you want to be able to use for operating expenses. We can look at that kind of both ways.
I have a follow-up, sorry.
Sure.
On the liquidation aspect on it, when, let's say someone's borrowed $100,000 and the business doesn't thrive, and they have to liquidate what they've done, what is that process? Not to get that down there.
And that's definitely the flip side of
Yeah.
business ownership, home ownership, car ownership, I mean, whatever. So we work with you. I mean, we're not gonna come to you and say you're 30 days past due. Okay, we are taking your business, we're taking all your things. No, we're gonna work with you because it benefits us to have you succeed, right? It's because we're in this together at this point. So once we do that, we try some workout plans and we try, you know, to get you back on your feet. If it doesn't work, and it doesn't always, then of course liquidation is a factor. Whatever you pledged for that loan, whatever we funded, whether it's the building or the equipment or whatever, we take it.
So that's why they have liquidation
But-
sales.
Exactly, yes.
Oh,
And then, you
I didn't
know,
realize that's what was happening.
So
I thought that-
we sell that collateral,
That makes sense
apply that to
now.
your loan, and then whatever's left,
Oh, that
you
makes
still
sense.
own.
I don't mind that.
As a follow-up to that question, most of the loans that you do are recourse as well, right? So personal guarantee.
Right,
So
yes.
in a liquidation scenario, if there's still a deficiency, you're gonna go after personal assets.
Potentially, yes. I mean, we're definitely going after you personally,
Yeah.
because you are liable for the debt, whether it was for your business or not, you're still liable. You borrowed the money, so yes.
That kind of ties into my question. It's, I guess
You borrowed the money.
the first question is the credit score. What credit score are you typically looking for? I've met with Melanie and Lakeisha, so I will be following up after this week. But, what is the credit score? And then that's where I'm kind of confused, because if I'm working on my credit and I have my personal credit in order, but then I'm walking in and I don't have any assets or anything, little assets, but nothing really significant, how does that work with okay, is my credit score gonna carry me? Like, what is that? Am I still gonna need assets with the good credit score? Like, how does that work?
Yes and no to all of his questions. So your personal credit is extremely important, regardless if you're looking for business financing or personal financing. You know, and most especially with business financing, that's what we're gonna look at first-ish. So we need to know that you can take care of your personal finances before we loan you money to handle your business finances, because, you know, those come hand in hand. You're paying your bills, you know, both places. So does that mean that you have a perfect credit score? No, you don't. You know, people have, you know, things happen over life. You miss some payments here and there, you know, you're working on it now. We don't really have a hard and fast rule on this is what credit score
You
we're
don't have a
looking for.
a set.
Because sometimes you may have, you know, a semi-decent credit score, but you still have some pretty significant deficiencies.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
you have some things in collections, you have some things, maybe you have some judgments or liens or something, you know, but your credit score may be, you know, 652. But, you know, we generally look for a score of 650 or higher.
Okay.
Our minimum that we would even consider would be 600, but with taking into account, you know, no judgments and liens and collection accounts, you know, we can help you work with those things too with our business resources. Yes.
So if you, for example, I know quite a few people who don't have a credit card just because they prefer to use cash payments for a lot of things, will you still accept business loans even if you don't have a credit card? Personal credit card or credit score?
Yes, we've actually had some people that have come in, they've just bootstrapped their whole life. They didn't want to have credit cards. They pay cash for their cars and pay cash for their homes, and great, awesome, right?
Do they need a loan at that point?
Right, I know, like, well, where all this money go now? But yes, so with the absence of a credit score, a credit report being established, you do have other relationships. So you have relationships most likely with a bank for your checking account, your savings account. We can look at other things and get maybe like a reference letter from some other sources in lieu of a credit report if that's just not available.
Like a landlord.
Right,
Yeah.
yes, anyone that can kind of speak to your, exactly. Yes.
Hey, sorry, Rita. Do you advise on how to establish business credit or have resources that can help people to do that responsibly?
Yes, we do. So we definitely have resources with our group that can help you with that. You can actually, once you get your business established, or even shortly prior to getting a DME number, that actually establishes your business credit. I mean, it at least gives you a number to pull. So whenever we are looking at lending to established businesses, we do go pull a business credit account or credit report. And it's pretty basic. It kind of shows what your past borrowing experience is. You know, it breaks down, you know, your 30-day, 60-day, 90-day payments and what UCCs maybe are out there, mortgages, things like that. It pulls all of that for us. So we absolutely look at that, and that's kind of how you get that started. At that point.
So we're gonna
Sorry.
put a pin in it for
Yeah.
a second, because I want to have Srijita, because the other thing that we get a lot of times is people then say like, oh, well, I'll just find an investor. So the loan situation's not gonna work right now, so let me just find someone who will invest in my business. So I'd love for Srijita maybe to share a little bit about like, who can invest in a business? And if somebody does invest in your business, what are some things that you should be looking into before you just go into that situation? Because just as much as you might say, well, why would I wanna get a loan? Because, you know, then I have to answer to the bank. Well, same thing as if you get an investor, you have to answer to that person or that team of people. so I'll let you kind of cover that.
Yeah. No, I'm glad we spent because this, the non-dilutive options are, what you should be exploring in addition to, even if you are, you're a venture-backable, scalable company, you still want to explore all your non-dilutive options because essentially non-dilutive means you're not diluting your business, right? And while you still are answerable and held to certain standards, but you're still retaining majority of your company. Secondly, I'm so glad, Kristin, you mentioned that statistic because that kind of helps set the tone, right? Because who's seen Shark Tank? Well, it's nothing like that in the real life. In my 7-year career, I have never seen a company just go into a room, give an excellent pitch, and just get an answer on the spot. Some of it is accurate. You do have to have a compelling pitch. You have to know how to talk about your idea. And yes, there is negotiation, but it's never happened over the span of an hour. So I think fundamentally what is good to understand is like how VCs, venture capital, is structured, right? There's different levels of equity-based funding. We can look, the earliest, some of the ones beyond friends and family can be angel investment rounds. So these are perhaps accredited angel investors, but the reason it's called angel investing is they're nicer. They probably, they have, kind of a stake in your mission, or they may be wealthy individuals who are just trying to diversify their portfolio and have a little bit of, play around money. It can be someone who cares about the industry, and all of those same things can be similar for venture capital as well. But with angel investors, usually, the standard of like where your company is at traction-wise, and by traction I mean how much revenue you're able to show, or a wait list, is usually a little more friendlier.
Sorry, is there an angel investor network here in Oklahoma City?
We don't have an established one right now. We used to with I2E in the past, so it's not a formal network. Oklahoma Venture Forum is an organization that we actually have an angel investment panel coming up in, I believe, December. That would be a good one to check out. But I know it's sort of in the works, and some conversations going on in Tulsa, Northwest Arkansas as well. So that's kind of the two different structures. And then now with venture capital, you all have probably been hearing about accelerator programs, pre-seed investment, seed investment. So these are all different levels, if you will. But one thing that I always encourage founders to kind of look into is like looking into how VCs are structured, right? So a venture capital firm is usually, they have their bosses to report to, people who are funding them. And they have extremely high standards. So one of the reasons why this number is so tiny is because these, the VCs, because they have to report back to these funders who have funded their firm, their fund, they're looking for exponential growth. So that means 10x returns in a comparatively short amount of time. Now there are exceptions, for example, with in the healthcare industry, with medical tech, some of these are like really long game, and you're talking, in the millions to even start with. But if it's a software, or sometimes even CPG or product-based companies that are pursuing to go national, global, you're looking at anywhere from 3 to 6 years of that 10x return. So one is learning how to understand how are the VCs thinking, is to think about how are they structured. Venture Deals is a book that I like a lot, and it does a great job kind of simplifying all the hundreds of terms. And then one of the other things we touched on during our panel on Tuesday, yes, this week, yes, Monday, is the different terms, right? So the venture capital scene in the Midwest and in Oklahoma has been rapidly growing. Traditionally, when we think about VC, we've thought about like Silicon Valley, right? Well, there's a lot of difference in kind of the culture as well, and I'm biased, but I think we have a great ecosystem in Midwest where it's not, you you don't necessarily have sharks out there out to get you, right? Yes, whether it's the Plains Ventures or the Cortados or the others, they're all looking to invest in profitable businesses that are going to make them those returns, but they're also trying to help you along the way. So let me talk a little bit about at I2E with some of the options that we have. So I actually work in the venture capital adjacent field, I would say. So the companies I work with, I'm kind of like their coach. And we have different programs all the way from early stage to helping validate that idea at the customer discovery level, because again, Misty, you'll probably attest that whether you're going for a loan or equity funding, you still have to solve a real problem that's going to make money, right? Now, how you're making money, how fast you're making money, how big your market is, those are the factors that you want to think about to figure out which funding route is correct for you. But our sister organization is Plains Ventures, and we joke that they're the newest, oldest VC in town. So that was essentially under the I2E umbrella, and over the last few years, we've separated out those arms so that I2E can focus on the venture development side as a nonprofit. Our mission is still to work with profitable businesses, but it's also the economic development of Oklahoma through entrepreneurship, whereas Plains on the other side, as I mentioned, they have their LPs too. So a couple of key things I would say, like in the initial stages, and I think most people here are early stage. Is there anyone who has a mature business? No, early stage. So one of the things I like to think about is like not leading with thinking about this is the money I need and then I can do X, Y, Z. Think about what is the X, Y, Z you need to do and then try to figure out the funding. And especially with VC, I saw on LinkedIn the other day something like, grow your company as if VC does not exist, right? At some point you will hit that point where you need to scale and you need to bring staff in and you need to invest in marketing and things like that, and you need that venture capital funding or that equity-based funding to go really quickly. But in the early stages, really don't keep that first of mind. And the second part is thinking about your market, right? We talk a lot about market segmentation, which is a TAM, SAM, SOM. The TAM is your total available market. Well, if you're trying to figure out that, hey, which path is right for me to go, am I going a scalable, high growth route, or am I a small business? One kind of easier way to figure out is to figure out how big is your market, right? If you're going to investors, they're probably wanting to see a market that is in the billions, right? And you may not reach that TAM. You're starting with your SOM, which is serviceable, obtainable market, but you're able to show that there's potential in this market. So that was a lot of information, but maybe we talk a little bit about the accelerators as well. So has anybody heard about the term accelerators or pre-accelerators? It's hard to say this word. The R. So these are programs that is helping you not just with funding, but also one with the mentorship and the educational components you need to build that solid foundation. And depending on which, you can see Y Combinator, which is kind of the OG, or we have different ones that are national. At I2E, we have a program called the Bridge 2, which is more still early stage. We want to see some traction, but it's a 16-week program phased out into 2 phases. The first one focusing more on educational mentorship, and the second one for those who qualify, moving on to a $50,000 funding, which is a convertible note, right? So even in equity, you find these different terms. So for example, with convertible note, what it means is it doesn't start off looking as an equity on your cap table, which is your ownership table, but with certain triggers, say you reach a revenue milestone or you raise a follow-on round of funding, then that triggers that interest to convert into equity. So there are different terms as well. So accelerators are a great way to get that educational opportunity, get strategic partnerships. We have different tracks, like for example, Verge OKC It's a generalist accelerator program, but they have other tracks which are maybe healthcare focused or art focused. So thinking about those couple of things when you're trying to pick what is the right option for me.
So one thing I want to add with what both of them have mentioned when we talk about the self-funding aspect of this, is first off, do not quit your job. And if you already did, go find a new job until you know that it's gonna work. And we say that just because that seems to be like the quick thing that people want to do. It's just like, I'll make it work, and then now I'm pushing the final line. Put yourself first. So what is it that you and those who might depend on you need? And figuring out what that process looks like. I think you mentioned this in a great way of like, not when I have the money, what can I do? It's what do I need to get to that point of having enough money? So I think one, that's a big thing, self-funding is don't quit your day job. And maybe in some cases, it's finding like, what's the side hustle that you can start to get to where you wanna go. And then with that, you can kind of see what's time that I'm committing to this. So an example I have is, I worked with somebody at OU, we worked at the Innovation Hub. We had access to laser printers. And so she was getting married and she said, you know, there's nobody who's making anything for men, for the groom, the groomsmen and everything. So she went to Hobby Lobby, she bought these boxes, she etched them with, you know, all of these things like symbolizing the groomsmen. So I think it was like a really cool initial. Then and you know, the laser printer was free at the Innovation Hub. It's open to the public, FYI. And then she got some glasses and she etched their name on it. She got a flask, etched their name on it, did all this stuff, and then she thought, okay, they loved it, so I'm just gonna post it on Etsy and see what happens. And so slowly, she got to the point that what originally was just like an etched box from Hobby Lobby that maybe cost her $5.99, she was selling just the boxes for groomsmen to give gifts to or for grooms to give gifts to their groomsmen for $20. Then she started making them for $25, and people kept buying them. Then she was like, I am too busy. I'm just gonna mark them at 50 because I don't have time. And people kept buying. So she eventually got to the point also because she was like, I just don't have time. I'm doing this after work because the iHub was open till 9 o'clock at that time. So she would sit there and work on her orders and everything. And so finally, because she got to know so much about the laser printer, she found somebody who worked on the laser printers and sold her a used one. So she saved enough money, bought a used one, and then had it at her house so she could work on it. So then one day we were talking about, so how much money have you made from doing this so far? And she was like, honestly, I've made, I want to say, she said like a third of what she made annually at her job at OU, spending 10% of her week working on it. And I was like, all right. So I know, so it's like, so if you were spending, you know, 20%, how much do you think you would make? And then how did you work up to the fact that you could say like, all right, I'm actually gonna make more than I make doing this? And then what do you wanna diversify your products into so that you know it's something that people continue to make? Because that also could have just been like a fluke. She also though had a spouse who made some good money, and so it was like, okay, well I can now quit and then do this job. So I say that because I think a lot of this is building up to what you wanna do. So for example, I know you have your business consulting company. If there's stuff that you're great at doing, what can you get started on to help people, but also finding who it is that really wants to pay for what you have. When you were mentioning your song and looking at your market, yes, we all know we could like sell what we have to everybody out there. But at the end of the day, who is actually going to give you their credit card to swipe and to make sure that like they get what they want to get? So finding ways to say, this is what I want to do, and how can I build up to that? So I know we had talked about with your fish and chips company on Monday about the aspect of what you love is to have a food truck and to be able to be out and about, but at the same time, is there something you can build up to with that? So I just randomly thought of this right now. So when do we see all the fast food places with a lot of fish on their menu?
Lent.
Fridays.
Lent
yeah.
or Fridays. So, in case you guys haven't noticed, so the Catholic Church celebrates Lent, and I know a number of other churches and religions celebrate it, but that is basically Fat Tuesday to Easter. And so the requirement is that every Friday you're supposed to eat fish, and so that's why you'll see like what a catch on the Whataburger menu. I was raised Catholic, so I had a lot of like, filet of fish at McDonald's. But it's like, so what could you do when people are like, I'm tired of just going to the standard place and saying, well, maybe you'll do a Friday, pop-up at different places, or if people wanna buy stuff. That's why you'll also see sometimes people will do like all-you-can-eat catfish on a Friday.
Yeah.
Cause I know some people just do that year round. But trying to find those times, those times, the market, the people specifically that are going to pay for your product. And I think sometimes that's the biggest thing that everyone skips. They go immediately to saying, I need money, but you wanna make sure, even though someone has told you that, the dish you make is so good, it's the best thing in the world, but if they're not willing to pay for it, you haven't gone out of your friends and family to ask, would you buy this? Is this really something that you should invest your time and energy in at that moment? So, Srijita mentioned a number of programs, so did Misty with REI Oklahoma. All of these different resources we have in the community, we want to help you figure that out. Somebody worked with a person wanting to open a smoothie bar outside of Lawton and was like, well, I think everybody will love it, but I want organic items only. And she said, okay, so let's go and see how much those items just cost to buy. And so they went to the grocery store, they looked at the cost of all of the items, and it's like, okay, so how many smoothies could you make with these items that you bought? And then all of a sudden it was like, okay, you're almost paying, I think it was, $8 per smoothie with the products you had, but then you're gonna have to hire someone to actually be at the smoothie bar, you're gonna have to pay your rent, you're gonna have to pay for utilities, So now let's see, when we look at all of that, combined with what you're gonna need, and the equipment, and this, you're gonna need like a $15 smoothie to like break even. And it's like, and this is no offense to anyone from Washington, but it's like, unless it maybe is like military officers or people who are just very particular about what they eat, do you know that people here will spend $15?
Well, we can look at the median income and look at stats like that as well.
So we have great resources and people who will help you figure all that out, because we know that's a lot. It's a lot to say, like, what is the value that I'm bringing to somebody, and what is my value of what I deserve to get paid? Because the other thing that pains me is when people start businesses, and the last thing that you have on your list of expenses is, how are you getting paid? Everyone seems to put that last, like, I'll just do it for free, I'll do it for free. Is that always gonna be enough? Or will you need to hire more people so that you can do that? So you mentioned strategic partnerships. Consider if there's something that you're doing, could you work with somebody else? So for example, with a business consulting, is there someone who's an accountant and a bookkeeper that already has clients, but he or she is like, their stuff is a mess. Like, they're bringing me all of this stuff and I have all the documentation, but they can really clean up like their organization, but I'm not gonna do that. So are you the person that can do that? So finding people that you can connect with to say, how do you build up to it, I think is huge. I really liked in Austin, there were a number of bars that had food trucks outside of them. Why is the bar gonna open up a whole restaurant if that's not what they wanna do? Why is the food truck gonna have a bar and alcohol if they don't have to touch that? So finding ways to partner, I think, is a huge way to help with the self-funding aspect so you can build up to where you wanna go.
And I'll just add a resource. So the word that we use is customer discovery, of like in the early stages, not being in that silo that, okay, even if you have the coolest solution, please go talk to people, not from a selling standpoint, because you're not leading the witness, but like truly from a research standpoint of like, what is their pain point? What does the decision-making process look like? What does their budget look like? And these are the things you want to ask. So we have a program called the E3 Customer Discovery Program that we are only able to take about 5 per cohort, but we are actually opening up the first session to anyone who wants to join. So if you will email me, I can send you that information, because we don't touch on a lot of those aspects, and maybe you can also figure out if E3 is a program for you.
So we have a little less than 15 minutes, so we'll open it back up to questions, because I think we've all covered a lot within our time. Some of you have great questions. I know, Alicia, you had a comment.
Oh, I was just gonna add that, one resource that REI Business, or REI Oklahoma Business Resource Center is adding is a credit readiness program. So we're really going to focus on getting you, like the credit score, work with you, like what does your credit score look like right now? Let's go over, in detail what that looks like and guide you through what that process looks like. A lot of people don't realize that 35% of that credit score is your payment history.
Yeah.
So whenever we break it down and really get you ready for the lending department. So we don't wanna just throw you over there, not that we're doing that right now, but there's a gap that we have right now, so we're gonna fill that gap as well, so
Well,
that's something we're working on.
you bring
looking
up
at
a
right
great
now.
point. How many of you would open up your bank app and show me what your bank statements look like right now?
First of the month, okay.
So we had about 4 people who confidently were like, I'm fine. And I think, that's why we want to present this topic during this week is, minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, people who come from, low socioeconomic backgrounds, people who didn't have parents who talked to them about funding and money and banking or any of that. Like, this is where we almost hit this, barrier for ourselves. And then it's like, it brings on shame, it brings on guilt, so if anything, I hope this also is a good day to say, start today. Don't worry about what you did in the past. With programs like Lakeisha's team offers, I know some of the banks are starting to offer more personal credit support. Tell yourself today is the day that I'm gonna start to get it in order, because we have to work through that. If you hear the term generational wealth, a lot of that is the fact that you're not feeling confident even about how things are looking right now. That's impacting where you're gonna go in the future. So, do you have a question?
Oh, I did. One of the things that wasn't on there was grants. Does Oklahoma have any grants for entrepreneurs?
Melanie, you sighed, so I'm gonna let you say something about grants.
There's opportunities, but oftentimes the hole is this big to try and get through to the grants, right? It's very difficult, so they're at the federal, state, local levels, and then you also have organizations that, for example, now I've got it wrong if it's Melinda Gates or, I think it's Melinda Gates.
Pivotal.
Yeah, she has her foundation, but she's put a bucket underneath that's technically venture capital focused on women and children health and wellness, right? So they are out there, they're just sometimes hard to find. We've done in the past, Verizon is out there in the past, we'll host, actually we pay for her to come in and do a training on how to find those grants and what that looks like. And those are usually offered at no cost, almost all of our trainings are no cost.
I would follow Stitch Crew.
Stitch Crew's good too.
On
Yeah,
their
Instagram, so
newsletter.
Stitch Crew is a local.
You can sign up for their e-newsletter and it has all those in there.
Accelerator program that started in 2018. Erica and Chris, her husband, have now pivoted to focus a lot more on women-owned businesses. But their team is really great about posting these are grants that we know are out there in the community, and I think they at least have the team that's constantly, so follow them on Instagram, sign up for the newsletter, and they'll send those every so often, letting you know about grants that they're seeing in the community. I think there have been some grants that a number of people have received because of post-COVID, but that's now expiring. And so I would say the amount of grants that are out there, like Melanie said, are very far and few between. And even in some cases, the government is giving those grants to organizations like ours to help, as opposed to invest in the business, just so that they can see it go further in the amount of people that we're capable of helping. But I would encourage anyone, put a Google alert for small business grants, because more people are popping up with them. It's just, it could be any corporation that's wanting to help the community, and it's just so hard to
Yeah,
find
and I'll
them.
also add that, so in the get discouraged if you're like, oh, I thought this was a woman-owned grant, a grant for women-owned businesses. And read into the fine lines, because a lot of organizations are being forced into doing that, but they're fundamentally still trying to help bridge that gap.
I just got permission, so if you guys want to get a copy of our last recording of that training, get Lakeisha your email and she will email it to you.
Hello Alice is another
Oh, yeah.
group to follow, because they've been doing a lot of grants. And they've been able to also find the funding to fight back on a lot of people who've tried to sue them on trying to support small businesses. And so Hello Alice, I would say would be another good one to look into, and they have grants, it seems like popping up all the time.
Also look into pitch competitions, and you always I love Kristin's story there about you always have to kind of do your math on your time, your word, what is the profit loss there. But there's a lot of pitch competitions in Oklahoma and otherwise that have up to, you can win up to $10,000-$20,000 in non-dilutive cash prize. If you're a student.
And that can help you buy some
And
collateral.
that could help you buy some collateral. Yeah, I know, and there's some that come top of mind in Tulsa, the We Build program does a women's female founders pitch competition. If you're a student, there's several pitch competitions for universities. And that is one thing I say, always try to leverage all the unique skill sets, the unique resources you have based on where you are in life. A lot of times I'll have student founders and they want to go and pitch to investors. I'm go get all the non-dilutive cash from college competitions first. So use the unique position that you're in and what's available.
But even with that, is there, because I have applied for so many, it's almost like you have to, I would need assistance just to, I need help just filling out the applications, and then it's once you submit, it's so many applicants where I've heard that you're gonna have to submit for 100, grants before you're actually approved or you're accepted. So that becomes overwhelming as well, so.
ChatGPT.
Yeah, I'm starting to learn that, yeah.
If you haven't used ChatGPT, mostly if you've written a number of different things, and I even use it, because I've written grants for Verge for different stuff, you can create a ChatGPT account and then start to basically teach it. This is me, this is my business, this is what I'm doing. Yeah, and so then when I'm oh, I have to respond to this question, so I'm this is a question, use this information, and then I'm recreate it. I'm not a grant writer, I can't always hire a grant writer, we all can't always hire a grant writer, but I will tell you, use at least, if you haven't used AI, look at the ChatGPT and use it to use your own words, make it sound like yourself, and you'll still have to go back and read through it, but it will save me half the time to respond to the things. I think even if you have kids, tell them to use that for their scholarships, because we know that you're gonna have to rewrite, but a lot of it is very similar. So I would highly recommend not to save a little bit of time in your sanity as you're submitting stuff, and then you could use some of that to help create what you need to have in your business plans if you haven't done that already. Then you can use that to create your social media posts so that you're not having to sit there and think now it gets a little crazy with the emojis, but at the same time, and the hashtags sometimes you're that's a little weird, but I think use some of these tools, and I think that's also some of the stuff that we want to try to equip more small businesses with in the community, is there are tools now because of technology that can really help us. So you can do the free version, you can pay
I recommend paying $20.
$20 a month.
What is the difference? What does it do differently?
Just the language,
You can create
language standard is
Yeah.
better. For what Kristin was saying, I have a custom GPT. It's a Srijita GPT, so I feed it kind of my tone, because sometimes it's you can read something and it's this is not me, and while I still have to modify, whether it's grants or posts, it kind of picks up on your tone and remembers that.
Which will help, because let's say even just in communicating and putting yourself out there to people, you're I feel like I'm just copying and pasting the same email, and this is a different type of person, this is for Estelle, this is for a bank, this is for, connecting to this resource. You can even create an email that requests more loan information for my business. I'm seeking things for da-da-da-da, and it will be okay, here you go, and then you can look through it, because you know, that confidence that you can have in your communication could even help you get to that next space, to connect to the right people, to have those conversations. It can take spreadsheets, and, you know, you could take all the data you have about your business, like this is what my sales look like, and ask what are the trends that you saw within the spreadsheet, and like let it look through it and say, oh, like you had an uptick in sales during this month, probably connected to that. Like it has the potential of really helping you with a lot of things that we all don't have the time or expertise. And at least if these are tools that you can utilize to get started, we mentioned on Monday, OU, OCU both have entrepreneurship legal clinics that provide free legal support for you guys to get your businesses started. Happy to give you guys that information. They can look at contracts, they can help get your business established with the state. They can help with IP and trademarks and all of this other stuff, utilizing the students that they have. So if there's tools that we can connect you to that will help you get up and running, we wanna help do that, because then when you look at how I'm gonna fund things, you can put it towards the things that are gonna help you just get to that next step, as opposed to just pay something off.
And I love what you said about the ChatGPT, because the questions, when you drop in the question, that is what hurts most folks applying for a grant, is they don't answer the question. They're putting what they want to say versus what the question is. When you use ChatGPT and they know who you are, what your business is, how do I best answer this question? And that's, because they're reading through all these, so you want the answer first, and then if you have those extra spaces for the other things you want to throw in, you can, but that is a good tool to use ChatGPT. So it drills down, it makes you, it answers the
Well,
question.
and it's just like, I mean, how many of you get so annoyed when you have had to apply for a job? And, and you're like, I gave them everything that, you know, I have, but it's like, you didn't answer the things that that job description recommended. And so, I mean, even a resume is like something that you have to tweak every time you apply for something new, so,
But please read through, like,
Yeah.
not just copy paste, because people are also getting smarter about, you know, and there's no shame in using AI tools. I think, you know, everybody should use it, but you have to add your own uniqueness and your human touch to it. With facts, always fact check, because ChatGPT, Cloud AI, like the way these language models are, they will like, they will,
you lied.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
yeah, they will blatantly have wrong information. So you want to be a little careful.
So I think that's that value of like feeding it the information you know is important, as opposed to just like, I need this answer. It's like, you know, sometimes I'm like, this is just my stream of thought, and I type something out, and I'm like, make this 5% more professional and 10% friendly. Like you can even say something like that.
You can give it an archetype.
And it'll go. Or like, I've applied for a grant, and it's like, you need to submit something that's under 2,000 characters. And I have like a whole paragraph of stuff, and I'm like, condense this into whatever characters that they want. And I'm like, okay, thank you. So, I'm like, and again, like, still have to clean some of it up, but it's like, at least it helps, because I mean, you start to think like of everything else while you're trying to just get something submitted. So use these tools just to like help your brain stop for a second. Or if you've just gone from, you know, business consulting or creating a balloon arch, and now you have to submit something, all of a sudden you're like, my brain has not shifted enough for me to like make this sound good. And so I think that's where it helps as business owners.
Use
It's
it like
just
an
to help
assistant.
you. Yes, it's your assistant. That's a great
Yeah.
So I know we're past noon, so thank you so much to Misty and Srijita. Please get connected to us, connect with one another so that you're not having to do this on your own. And again, make sure that you tag and look at more information with MED Week, and you can find our information on there as well.